Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why I get annoyed by a lot of the discussion and debate and everything that we see out there regarding what a healthy diet is. And I'm going to say this in the context we were talking about for the general population. We're not talking about people with major health issues, which this is going to interfere with. In other words, someone who's just had a heart attack, obviously their athletic performance and athleticism is going to be non existent. They're not going to be able to train hard. They're not going to be able to build work capacity. They're going to have severe limitations for a while. Okay? It's not to say that people who haven't had heart attacks do not go on to become athletes, because they do sometimes. And I'm not talking about people again who again have just had a surgery and have specific dietary recommendations, or someone with major gut health issues. They've got damaged lining to their gut. All of these things, there's a lot going on there. And I'm not telling people that they should eat foods that they have intolerance of or allergies to. So set all that aside, because everyone likes to take everything to the furthest extreme. Like if you say something that is true 99% of the time, people want to come up with that 1% exception to argue against you. And generally those people are morons and should be dismissed. Anyone who does that is a moron, and you really shouldn't take them seriously. They have no argument. They're idiots, incapable of rational thought. So, setting all those exceptions aside, generally speaking, the healthiest diet is going to be the one that fuels your athletic performance and your recovery. Why? Because we know that training is the single best thing you can do for your health. Now, when I make that statement, do I mean that going and competing at the elite level in powerlifting and consuming handfuls of anabolics is promoting health? No, that's not what I'm saying. We're talking about training hard in general, being athletic. Strength training is the best thing you can do for your health. It's better than most dietary interventions. Okay? The statistics show this, and I'm not saying dietary interventions don't matter. But training is the number one thing you can do for most of your health. So we need to be thinking in terms of what diet will fuel physical activity for you as an individual. Right? That's what's going to improve your health the most. Why? Because we know strength training has a better impact on cardiovascular risk than just about anything you can do. It's one of the number one factors. Strength training even beats cardio when it's been looked at in the literature. Even though they call it cardio, it improves cardiovascular health more than conditioning work. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do conditioning work, because it's a pretty good idea to do so. But in a bizarre scenario where you could only pick one, strength training improves heart health more than cardio does. It's not me saying that. That's the leading experts looking at the research within the last couple of years are now saying that. It's based upon the research. People who strength train at least twice a week get cancer across the board, almost all forms of cancer, at about 50% of the rate that the general population does, even when other lifestyle factors are accounted for, including diet. The strength training alone cuts your chances of cancer in half. People who strength train, who do get cancer, have double the survival rate when included with therapy who continue to strength train of people who do not. So what's your best fight against cancer? No, it's not to cut and milk out vegans. No, it's not to remove all table sugar, keto people. Although reducing table sugar would be a real good idea. Be a good idea. Strength training. Strength training is the number one thing you can do. In addition to not smoking and not being obese. Right? But strength training can help you be less obese, can't it? What else? Diabetes. People who lift weights get diabetes at a 70% lower rate than the general population. And that's all lifting. We're not talking about all, specific types. People who train harder, that's going to be obviously less. But people who lift weights, just people who resistance train, any type, even inefficient, low quality type, because this includes everybody who resistance trains, gets diabetes at a 70% lower rate. Strength training has been heavily correlated with improved memory and cognition over age 60. It's correlated with lower rates of dementia, particularly leg training, leg strength, is heavily correlated with lower rates of dementia and Alzheimer's. Strength training is the best thing you can do for bone density. You guys have seen my DEXA scans. As a strength athlete, my bone density is probably fourth or fifth standard deviation above average. And I'm over 40 years old. That's based upon my actual scans of my body. So think about osteoporosis, osteoarthritis. These are things that take people down later in life. I mean, osteoporosis is a killer because it makes you immobile. Okay? And if you're immobile, all these other factors start kicking in harder. Strength training maintains bone density for life. Nothing compares with strength training for bone density. Absolutely nothing. So let's come over and look at all of this. When we look at all of these factors and the impacts they have, these improvements are generally better than dietary interventions. In other words, even if we look at the epidemiology and some of the bad diets, even improving some of those bad diets do not change these outcomes as much as the strength training does. So what does this tell you? The best diet you can eat is one that will fuel training performance and recovery. What does that mean? Well, that varies a lot from person to person, doesn't it? It means consuming enough carbohydrates. I just did a recent video on that. Consuming enough carbohydrates to fuel your training, which varies tremendously from person to person. For me, that's a lower carb diet relative to my calorie percentage. I only eat the bare minimum carbs to fuel my training, which would actually be a lot for some people. But for me, it's only like 20% of my calories. Including enough dietary fat to avoid inflammation, to have recovery, eating a higher protein diet so that you can grow muscle easier and recover from training. And very high protein diets are not associated with health issues, by the way. That's been debunked largely. But just consuming mostly whole foods. Instead of standing around worrying about stupid stuff like saturated fat, because we already know strength training matters, and the saturated fat is a point of contention as far as health risks. How about instead of worrying about that, we just limit our refined garbage? Because you know what? Most of the really refined foods are what seems to be linked with health problems. Refined sugars, refined fats. That would include cooking with butter, cooking with oils. Refined carbs, refined sugars. All right, this is the stuff that we know is killing people. That's killing the sedentary population. All right, how about you simply eliminate those things or minimize them in your diet, save them for special occasions. Not the goofy if it fits your macros people. I'm going to weigh out 300 calories of ice cream every day. Those people are idiots. I know they don't want to hear that. I have friends who do that. How about we just limit these things and maybe only have them on special occasions so that you're not consuming them on a daily or weekly basis. There you go, problem solved. Incidentally, having a diet that's micronutrient sufficient, that's high protein, that gets both enough carbs and enough fat to fuel your individual training needs and recovery and minimize inflammation. It means you can't drop fat too low. And you can only get away with dropping carbs so low. And for a lot of people who don't have really high volumes of training, a keto diet's perfectly acceptable. There, I said it. There you go. I've used it even when training. Consuming a diet that meets all your micronutrient needs and is mostly whole foods and hits those other things that I just pointed out, that is what's going to give you the best training performance. And in some cases, that might mean eating very large amounts of fats. It might mean eating very large amounts of carbohydrates relative to what a lot of people would consider to be safe. But here's my point. If you're using it to fuel training, there is no association at all with health risk from eating very large amounts of fat or very large amounts of carbohydrates. I mean, if you're burning all of it, if that's what you need to fuel your training and fuel your recovery, and you're not getting fat from it, then your health outcomes have improved. And that's the point I always try to bring home here. We know that strenuous, hard training is probably the best overall thing you can do for your health. So the best diet is the diet that lets you train hard, that fuels your workouts, that facilitates recovery from those workouts so that you can train harder next time, so that you can adapt and get better. That's how you fight heart disease. That's how you fight cancer. That's how you fight osteoporosis, diabetes, dementia. All these things that destroy our life and our quality of life can be largely offset with training. So you need to eat to fuel your training. That's the healthiest diet you can follow. Because people who don't train, who eat whatever perfect diet some person has decided is the perfect diet, will still never be as healthy as the hard training individual who maybe eats a diet that's not as perfect on paper. You will not compete with them. That's my advice. That's what's healthy. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.